Hello everybody and welcome to this Facebook Live. Thank you for joining us this evening. This is a Facebook Live on preparing children with ADHD for returning to school in September. I hope you're feeling comfortable and relaxed. We're going to be talking this evening for about an hour. You're very welcome to post comments and ask questions. Perhaps you could let us know if you are a parent or carer of a child who has ADHD or whether you work with children who have ADHD. We will try and see if we can answer some questions live, but if not, we will get round and answer everybody's questions afterwards by posting in the comments. Just to let you know that this video will be available to watch afterwards on my Facebook page, so don't worry if you have to pause or dip in and out. Also, the slides that we're going to be showing you, I will post them in the comments afterwards as well. Okay. Okay, so I've just posted these quotes here because I think they really encapsulate the essence of ADHD. This Facebook Live, what we're not going to be doing is talking about what ADHD is. So if you do want some more information, then there will be information in the resources, but also you're welcome to contact myself or Solly. But I've posted these here because whilst we're going to be talking about how to support children with ADHD returning to school, I want you to keep in mind that ADHD is a difference in how a child's brain is wired. And this in particular affects executive functioning, so those planning and organisation skills, but also, as you probably well know, how a child is able to regulate their emotions. And so I've posted these quotes here because I want us to keep that in mind whilst we're talking today. And we're going to talk about things like the loss some children have experienced, and then lots of practical strategies for how you can support your children in preparing to go back to school. So my name is Hannah Morris and I'm an educational psychologist. I have worked in local authorities, and about 9 years ago I started working in independent practice. I do a range of assessment work, training, consultancy, working with schools and families in all different settings, children aged from about 3 to 16 years. And my practice is founded on the principle of understanding, because I believe it's really important we have a clear understanding of a child's strengths and difficulties so we know how best to help and support them. I just posted here a link to my Facebook group. We're going to give you lots of information today, but if you are interested in getting even more, then do join the group. I post lots of information about all aspects of learning and child development. You can ask questions, we have a bit of fun, and there's lots of different professionals and therapists that belong to the group that post resources and tips as well. So here with me this evening is Solly, so I'm going to pass you over because I think she wants to say hello.
So thank you so much. Well, thank you first of all, Hannah, for inviting me, and thank you for everybody on a Sunday night at 7:30, whatever you normally do on a 7:30 on a Sunday night. Thank you for not doing it and joining us instead. So just if you haven't come across me before, I was a teacher for 30 years and ended up as a Senko. But after 30 years, I had, I'd reached my limit, really. I wanted to be outside the education system and support and help parents. And I felt that that's what I wanted. That's where I wanted to be. I wanted to be outside the system, supporting and helping parents with ADHD rather than in the system. My son has got ADHD, so I know what it's like to live with that. I don't know, that chaos and the spontaneity, but he's amazing, beautiful, gorgeous soul. So I set up Yellow Sun, and one of my main things is just to bust this stigma of what ADHD is. So we talk about it. We say, yes, my child has got ADHD without any fear of people thinking, oh, tut, you're just a bad parent. So that's my huge aim. I do three main things. I go into schools and train teachers. I do one-to-one family support, and I have an incredible online membership. So if you want any more details of that, I'll have my email at the end. So please just contact me. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you, Solly. Okay, so I'm going to start off talking for a little while, and then Solly's going to take over in a bit. One of the things I think it's really important that we need to think about before we start to really focus on what we can do to help children with ADHD is to just reflect a little bit on their experiences of loss during lockdown. And some of the things that may have impacted them emotionally, so that we can get a sense of where they're at and then think about what's going to help them moving forward. So obviously one of the main aspects of loss that all children, not just those with ADHD, all children would have had some aspect of losing that teaching and learning experience. So loss of being taught by their teacher. As much as parents, we tried our best, and I know we all were pulling our hair out, trying to work out how we can help our children and manage that balance between work and still giving our children some sort of education. They will have all had different experiences. Some children were learning online, some had very little. But they will all have had an element of not having access to that excellent quality teaching that hopefully most children get in schools. And so obviously this will have had an impact on their learning, and there will be gaps in their knowledge now because they just haven't had the same learning experiences for a good term and a half they normally would. Also, there's been a loss in the extracurricular activities, from sports day to clubs, whether it's after school clubs or things you do out of school. And for a lot of children who struggle academically, this is where they really get to shine and get to experience that sense of achievement and success, possibly where they're happiest. So for them, this would have been a big experience of loss and a big sense of not being able to do something that they love. For children with ADHD, we need to think about the fact that they will have lost access to key workers and therapists. Some children may have had continued input, either virtually or being able to go back into school a little bit, but it will have been different. And what we know is that a lot of children with ADHD do develop relationships with key workers in school, whether it's a particular teacher or a learning support assistant. Whilst it's limited and the funds are limited, those relationships are really, really important. And to have that suddenly stripped away can be quite scary for a child. And also, they may not have been able to access some of the therapists that they may have been seeing. So if a child was having cognitive behaviour therapy, perhaps by a psychologist, or occupational therapy, those disruptions will have had an impact on their development. So routines and predictability. Whilst I know that many of you will have tried to create some sort of routine and sense of stability and predictability at home, it will have been different, and certainly for a while it would have been very, very disconcerting for children that their daily routine has just suddenly changed, and that predictability of, well, I know I go to school Monday to Friday during term time, or whatever timetable your child is on. And that can create a lot of stress and anxiety for children. And then interaction with friends as well. Children are able to see each other a bit more now, and they may have been interacting virtually, but it's not quite the same as being in the same room as somebody, playing together, hanging out together. Some children may have really enjoyed that virtual online experience, but for others, they will have really missed their friends, being able to spend quality time with them. We also need to think about the fact that for many families, there's been a change in lifestyle. So they will have experienced financial difficulties that will have affected children in terms of what they're able to do, and perhaps what they're able to access in terms of activities and resources and toys even. And the home that is usually a calm and safe and relaxed environment may have for a while been a bit more stressful and a bit more chaotic whilst everyone was dealing with that change and processing those emotions. And of course, for children with ADHD, we know that they need that space, they need that physical space. And so for some of you, if you're living in a flat and there's a small enclosed area, or you've had to be shielding and staying indoors for a while, we know that this is going to be particularly difficult for children with ADHD. Sadly, some children will experience bereavement, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this coming up, but it is something to be aware of, because grief does have an effect on children, even if it's somebody they didn't know. If you have yourself been bereaved, then your child will be picking up on emotions and things that are going on and the changes that are happening around them. And so it's important that we don't overlook the emotional impact that bereavement can have on children. And then, of course, for our teenagers, that loss of freedom and independence, ADHD or no ADHD, is part of healthy development in adolescence, to be able to spend more time away from your family, with your friends, getting that distance. And our teenagers, they've had a long period where they've not been able to do that. So we need to sort of be aware of the impact that may have had on their developing adolescence. And then thinking about the other end, our very young children, perhaps they've had a loss of their innocence, of suddenly they're more aware of life's dangers, and this particular danger, it's not going away and it's not resolved quickly, and we're struggling to be able to move on from it, because there's still this uncertainty in the air and in the media. And just because we don't necessarily talk in front of our children, or we might try and protect them from what's happening, it doesn't mean that they're not picking up on this sort of sense of being a bit scared still, and that uncertainty. And then, of course, a big one for children with ADHD in particular, they've not been able to have those planned transitions that they usually would have done, whether it's moving to a new school, or just changing class, or a new teacher, even just a different environment. For a child with ADHD, those are particularly difficult and challenging experiences to go through. And not having had those opportunities to prepare and visit and spend time getting to know new people and places means that there's going to likely be increased anxiety in terms of returning to school. But as well as thinking about the loss that children have experienced during lockdown, we need to think about some continued loss that they might experience once school starts. So for some children, sadly, school is not a safe place for them. They don't feel safe there. Perhaps they've been bullied, perhaps they have sensory processing issues, and they really struggle with the sensory overload and feeling emotionally overwhelmed, and they just don't like being at school. So for them, lockdown may have actually been a really positive experience, because it could have been a respite from school. So for them, they may be more concerned, more worried about the transition back to school than they were about the virus and being in lockdown. Something that's, I think, is often overlooked for children with ADHD is that whilst they present with a lot of energy, they do experience fatigue, whether it's from the effort of having to concentrate. Perhaps they have an additional specific learning difficulty, which means they're having to work really, really hard all the time at school. And obviously, we know that a lot of children with ADHD, they will mask in school, how they're feeling and how hard things are for them, and then it all gets let out at home with you. And so that sense of fatigue and exhaustion, actually, they've had a break from it during lockdown. And that sort of relaxation and not having to exert all that effort just to cope in an environment and cope at school, that is now going to be a loss as they go back to school for some of these children. Familiar people and places. So when children go back to school, most children, ADHD or not, they're going to be with different people, whether it's a different classroom or a different school. There's going to be changes. And many schools will have started to prepare children for this over lockdown and towards the end of the summer term. But some children won't necessarily have really grasped what this is and being able to process and make sense of it. Even children who were attending school for a little bit or doing virtual lessons. So we need to be prepared that when children go back to school, they may well struggle at that point with that sort of reality of, okay, things really are different, and then the emotional impact that will have on them. Planning and organisation. So for children with ADHD, we know executive functioning is a big issue for them. They struggle with planning and organisation. So going back to school is going to be particularly challenging, because they will maybe have forgotten some of the strategies and some of the routines, and then they've got to maybe learn some new ones as well. So that loss of the familiarity of whatever systems were in place to help them is something that they're going to have to cope with, and then perhaps relearn some new ones. As I said, that lack of teaching and learning, they've just not been able to access, means there's going to be gaps in knowledge. And for children with ADHD, many of them will already be not performing at their potential because of the barriers to their learning. And so the lockdown experience is going to have compounded this, and they may well have even greater gaps than some of their peers. Forgotten skills, social and emotional skills. A lot of children with ADHD, they also have autism, and they may have had a lot of input in terms of developing their social skills, and this will have maybe been lost a little bit. They certainly won't necessarily have had the opportunities to practice those social skills that they're being supported to develop. And then when we think about emotional regulation and how hard it is for children with ADHD to recognise and manage their feelings in the moment, something we're going to talk about more in a minute. But again, any strategies that they've learned, they're going to be out of touch with them. You may have been helping them at home, which is great, but once they're in the school environment, it's going to be relearning and refamiliarising and coping. I put an attachment here as well, because when children go back to school, there may be a loss in terms of the fact that they've spent so much more time with their family over the last few months, and we're probably going to see a lot of separation anxiety. Not just in young children, but children of all ages, finding it hard to separate from their caregivers and getting used to being apart from them again. And for children with ADHD who struggle to manage and cope with their emotions, this may be particularly challenging for them. And finally, obviously, we still have that loss of safety and security, because we're still learning about the virus and it's still here, and there's still an element of uncertainty. And I know Solly's going to give you some really great strategies of how you can support children, preparing them to return to school and reassuring them, and that's all coming up. So I've been talking about loss because I want you to get a sense of where your children may be at. But this isn't a training on bereavement and loss, but I also didn't want to leave you with nothing if you have had a bereavement or you feel that your child has experienced a sense of loss. So I've just put this up here, which when I add the slides at the end, you're very welcome to download, print it. It's just a little prompt. If you want to know what you can do, it's a good starting point. So listen and acknowledge feelings is the first point. Don't try to fix your child if they're experiencing emotions in relation to a bereavement or loss. Just be there, listen to them, acknowledge their feelings, help them label their feelings. We know that communication is affected when children experience loss because of how the brain responds to stress chemicals, something I'll talk about in a moment. So if your child can't tell you how they're feeling, then you're going to need to observe their behaviours and try to understand and interpret those behaviours as being a response to their coping with their bereavement or loss. And think about giving honest information. Don't shy away from talking with your children. It's better to say something than not. Just keep the information, try to make it age appropriate, but also developmentally appropriate as well. Show safe ways to express emotions. This is about modelling yourself when you're feeling particularly anxious or frustrated. If your child sees how you cope, that's really good for them. And also sharing memories of lockdown, of experiences in the past, the difficult times, but also the positives, and then thinking about hopes for the future as well. It's all going to help your child sort of be reassured as they go through their process of grief, whether it's from somebody who has died or just general sense of experiencing a lot of stress through all the different losses they've experienced. I'm just going to put a little bit here in about emotional regulation before I pass on to Solly. I want to focus on this in particular because now we've talked about the different experiences children have had. What we know is that they're going to experience a lot of emotions, and for children with ADHD, this is something they find really, really hard to manage, particularly in the moment. So even small losses can have a big impact emotionally. A loss may seem insignificant to you, but if it's bothering your child, it's important we take notice and address it, because any losses that are unaddressed can lead to mental health problems. What happens when children experience trauma and bereavement and lots of stress is that stress releases chemicals into the brain, such as cortisol and noradrenaline, and it affects how the brain functions. So there's two parts of the brain that's really worth thinking about. The first is called the amygdala, which is basically your natural instincts and your protective mechanism to react when you sense danger. And the other is your prefrontal cortex, which is like the control panel that sort of sends those messages back to say, actually, it's okay, you can calm down, or actually, no, this is really, really worrying. And what happens when children experience a lot of stress is that the amygdala takes over and the prefrontal cortex starts working as well. So children are geared up to respond to danger and what they perceive as danger, even if there isn't really a threat. They're sort of on edge and they misinterpret situations. So when the chemicals are released, then they can have various different effects on a child. It can affect children's physical health. They can experience stomach aches and headaches. There can be issues with sensory processing. As I said, they're oversensitive to situations and they may overreact and not be able to engage in that rational thinking. Thinking skills in terms of learning are affected. So being able to sequence and process instructions and access memory. When children are in a heightened state of stress, they just can't do that. And obviously there's therefore an impact on learning and being in a classroom. Sleep is often affected. We know this is an issue for children with ADHD anyway, so do speak to your healthcare professionals if your child's sleep has been off the wall or goes off the wall and gets much more disturbed, either when they start school or even a few months down the line. It can all be related. And those chemicals also affect areas of the brain related to communication. So children are going to find it much harder to talk about their feelings and let you know how they feel. So children with ADHD find it extremely hard to regulate their emotions, to control them in the moment, to be able to recognize what they're feeling, understand why they're feeling it, and then know how to cope and communicate and express safely. It's not necessarily because they don't understand. Maybe if your child has autism as well, that is the case. But if it's just ADHD, then they probably do understand what to do. But in the moment, they can't remember it. That prefrontal cortex, their rational thinking just isn't working well for them. So it's going to be a challenging time, and I want you to be prepared for more meltdowns because returning to school will likely be stressful for children with ADHD. I'm not saying this to send you into panic, and Solly's going to give us some really great strategies that are going to really make you feel confident. There's lots you can do to support and prepare your child for that transition back to school, but it is important you're aware so that you can be prepared. And something you can do to prepare is just refresh yourself on what you can do if your child is in a meltdown and has a meltdown. I've just put this here as a prompt. Again, you're very welcome to print it off from the slides. It's just a brief reminder. I could do a whole course on emotional regulation and managing meltdowns, but I just wanted to give you a little something to take away with you for thinking about during that transition back to school. You may have heard of some of these before, but it's worth just reminding ourselves. So the moment that your child's having a meltdown, assuming they're not in immediate danger, obviously it's very distressing seeing them so upset and losing control, and our instinct is to want to help our children. What I would suggest is, if you can, just pause before you jump in there, take a breath and just have a moment to think about not necessarily just what you're going to say, but how you're going to sound when you say it, because we don't want children picking up on further anxiety. And if they are more stressed because of the experience of being in lockdown, then their brain is going to overreact. So if you shout, not because you're cross, but because you're trying to shout over their shouting, they may interpret that as you being angry at them. So really try to sound and present as calm. Give your child space to safely let out their emotions. Give them space to just be how they need to be when they're feeling emotionally out of control. Maybe you could pre-teach some ways that they can safely let out their emotions. So maybe they want to punch a pillow, or you let them know it's okay if they want to go outside. Maybe they want to stamp on a cardboard box, tear up a magazine. All these things you can have ready in advance for if your child needs them. But also it's important to think about those self-calming techniques, and there'll be some links in the resources for where you can find activities to work with your child on self-calming. But we want to teach them in advance so that they can be more easily able to use them when they are feeling completely anxious and frustrated and angry. And of course, if you do it with them and model to them, they're going to find it easier to learn. We spoke before about the prefrontal cortex and how that rational thinking is just not easily accessible when a child is highly stressed. So in a meltdown situation, they're not going to be able to reason, and they're not going to be able to access that verbal language and communication. So having some visual cues, just some simple keywords to hand that you can just show and prompt your child with in terms of what they can do when they're feeling particularly overwhelmed, that's going to be very helpful for you. Also, I've put here to be explicitly understanding. Sometimes I think we understand in our heads, but how do we actually let our child know that we really understand what they're going through? And when a child is in the meltdown, they might not necessarily be able to understand what you're saying, but they need to know that you know that you're not cross. You know that you understand how they feel and that you're not cross with them. So just that reassurance of I'm here for you, and if you can convey the message that they're not being naughty, that you can say that they're feeling overwhelmed by their emotions, labeling their emotions for them. It seems like you're feeling a bit angry. I can see you're upset. Take the space and time you need. I'm here for you. This is what you do. And then also focusing on those sensory comforts. You know your children best, what works for them, whether it's a blanket or a toy or holding ice in their hands, whatever works for them, whatever they like, that distracts, that calms, that helps reassure them and make them readily available. So just before I hand over to Solly, I just wanted to share with you this course that I've put online. It's a trauma and bereavement course that I run for schools, and I've made it accessible online for early years, primary and secondary settings, because I really want teachers and learning support assistants, senior leaders, I want everybody in a school environment to be ready to support children when they return back to school, to be informed about the impact of trauma and bereavement. So if you are a parent that's watching, carer that's watching, please do share this with your child's school and anyone you know that works in education. If you yourself do work in education, do take a look, share it with your colleagues. It's great for a refresher. It's filled with lots of strategies and activities and resources that you can use in preparing and supporting children as they return to school and throughout the next academic year as well. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Solly now. Here we go.
Thank you. Hannah, before you go, Michelle has asked, will the slides be available in a printable format? Oh, I can't hear you.
Yes, I will definitely be putting the slides on. I'm not very confident when it comes to technology, so I'm going to put them on as a PDF. If you can't print them, do let me know, and I'll work something out. Maybe my genius technical husband can step in. Yes, they will definitely be available.
Okay, right. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay, thank you. So Hannah brilliantly portrayed the scene that is possibly going on in your home. There's some fears, there's some worries, there's some challenges going on. The Chief Medical Officer actually came out this morning to say it's really in our children's best interest to go back to school. So I'm assuming that the majority of children next week, or the 2nd of September, or whenever it is, will be going back to school. So there will be some challenges, but please don't be too fearful of it, because there are things that we can do. So I'm going to talk for the next 25 minutes or so of what actually are these challenges, but then most importantly, what on earth can you do about it? Because there are things that we can do. So the first one, like a real practical thing, and you might even have started this already, is getting the uniform and shopping for uniforms. So I know in the scheme of things, this might not be your number one worry and your number one thing that you're concerned about, but it's something that has to be done. And going and shopping for uniform, particularly at the moment with social distancing and masks and being out, some people are finding that really, really stressful. So I would say, as much as you can, do stuff online. There's loads of shops that do free returns. Marks and Spencer's do that lovely range where everything, the labels are all nice and soft for our children with sensory difficulties. So do as much as you can online. But if you have to go to a shopping centre, maybe go really, really early or really, really late. So whatever suits your child best. If they're still buzzing around at 9 o'clock one night, then maybe go at that time. Go to Asda 24/7 that is open and go and do the shopping then. Or if they're a really early riser, go at 7 o'clock. Just go and get it over and done with. But something very important, and Hannah did touch on it, is this need for predictability and routine. And our children with ADHD thrive on routine, which is why sometimes during lockdown, this has been all over the place and it's been difficult. So you need to write a list and you need to stick to the list. So if you're shopping in wherever, your local shopping centre, don't deviate. Don't say, oh, let's just pop into somewhere else to get something that is not on the list, because that's when you will have a meltdown. You've just got to go. You've just got to get the stuff on the list and don't deviate. If you can, and I know you can do this for shoe appointments, shoe fitting, make an appointment so that you just have it on your list. You have the time. You could just go just for shoes one day rather than schlapping all over the place, going to Smith's for the pencil case and do the shoes. You know, maybe one day is just the shoes, then one day you just go and do Smith's for all the stationery. You know, have a plan, make it clear, write it on a list. But I would always say, wherever you go, and this just doesn't just apply for the shopping, but always have an emergency pack with you. And in the emergency pack, particularly are high protein snacks, because we know an ADHD brain really thrives on that energy kick of high protein. So nuts, if your child can tolerate nuts, or little protein bars. There's so many bars now are made which say protein on them, and that will just give your child a little energy boost. Try not to have too much sugar, because that's a false energy boost. They'll get the sugar rush, but then they'll crash. Also in your emergency pack, have some stuff for them to do. So if they're great with little Rubik's cubes, the little wooden gadgets, the gadget fiddle things, the little puzzles that you get in Christmas crackers, you know, something that will keep them occupied whilst you're waiting in a queue. You know, we can't say to our children, stop fiddling, stop moving, stop talking to that person. That word stop, it can come out of our mouth, but it doesn't compute in an ADHD brain, because they will be impulsive. So we need to give them things to occupy themselves and to distract themselves when they're feeling like it's all being too much. One thing about being out with a child with ADHD, if it's getting all too much, quit. Go home. If you haven't got the shoes, if you haven't got the pencil case, if you haven't got the, the new backpack, if your child is not in the mood, if they're grumpy, if they're tired, if they're hungry, it's not worth the stress. So just go home and go and do it another day. So something that's really important for our children is just to get back into this routine. I'm just going to make sure Hannah's not trying to phone me. Okay, so yeah, just get back into the routine. Our children have been totally out of routine. If you have managed to keep them into any semblance of routine, bloody amazing. But for the majority of us, it's been really, really difficult. Since March, our children have been at home. So we know an ADHD brain finds transitions very tricky. So that is literally a transition from being dry to getting into the bath, going from one room where they're cozy and comfortable to going to another room. But a big thing of being at home and then suddenly transitioning to school is going to be really hard for our children. So we need to start that very early. So what we could do, and I know this is easier said than done, but very sneakily, you could start making those bedtimes earlier. Bedtimes probably have gone out the window in lockdown. They've probably gone to bed at midnight. They've probably sneaked another game of Xbox. They've then probably woken up much later. So try and push all those times back to what the times were when they started, when they were still at school. So try and start making bedtimes a little bit earlier. Try and waking them up if they're still sleeping beyond 9, just to get back into the routine. But something we have to do with our children with ADHD always is do it together. Our children hate more than anything this. I am the adult, you are the child, I'm going to tell you what to do. They hate that because that's happened in so much of their lives, and there have been so many problems and difficulties that what they're actually doing is blaming all the adults for making all these decisions that have just gone wrong. So that as much as we can, we've got to give our children a semblance of control. And that means you do stuff together. You ask their opinions, you compromise, you find a middle ground. So work out what this routine, what time should we go to bed? Midnight's too late. Suggest a time, and then find a compromise and have a really great sleep routine. I haven't got time to talk about sleep routine tonight, but try and start having a really good sleep routine. I love charts and checklists and timetables because our children, as I've said before, they thrive on routine. They have to know what is happening. So if you want them to start going to bed at 9 o'clock, you can't just say at 5 to 9, bed. It needs to be written down somewhere. Our children are very visual. So have a chart, show them what activities are going to happen. When are they going to come off the Xbox? When is going to be dinner? What motivating thing can they then do? And then it's bedtime. And what does bedtime look like? What's the routine? Write it out on a chart. I love just simple things like this. So you could just print these out from making it on Word, or just draw it on a piece of paper, and on each box, get your child, and this is what I mean about doing it together, get them to write, what does this routine look like? What we're doing first, then what happens, and then it's bedtime. So they know what to expect. They know what's coming up. You're not just saying, oh, it's past 9 o'clock, you should be up. Stop, up to bed. Because our children are not going to respond to that. They're not going to go, oh, okay, mummy. Oh, you're quite right. It's 9 o'clock. I should be in bed. They're going to fight you. So the more you can get that routine in place, the more that they have got skin in the game, the more that they understand, oh, this is what our leading up to bedtime has got to be, then they're more likely going to do it. So Hannah spoke a little bit about executive function difficulties. And one of the classic things for children with ADHD is being disorganized. And it's not because they deliberately just can't be bothered to put things in place, or they can't be bothered to file things away neatly. It's not that they can't be bothered. It's just that there is so much going on in the brain. There are so many distractions. There are so many more motivating things to do that the boring stuff just gets pushed to the side. Organizing my stuff, that doesn't create any dopamine. That doesn't create any sort of feel-good chemicals in my brain, so I'm not going to do it. But as we know, you have to be organized, otherwise you're going to be late. Otherwise, you're not going to have your right things. Otherwise, you're going to then feel guilty and bad and get told off, and it's a vicious cycle. So we need to help our children. We can't just say, why haven't you got your book bag ready? We need to help them. So that fabulous trip to Smith's or Amazon online, get all the stuff you need. Start ordering it now. Start making a list. Make your shopping list. What do you actually need? What folders do you need? What equipment do you need? And then I love boxes. I love things to put things in. My husband loves it because he'll open a box and he'll say, why is there another box in here? And I say, no, because that's the box for the staples. And then there's another box for the paper clips, so get yourself organised, get your child organised. If it doesn't come naturally, you know, our children learn by seeing good role models. So if it doesn't come naturally to you, just try these new systems to try and get yourself really organised with equipment. So we know our children, and particularly teenagers who are going to be starting back at school, are going to have homework. Anybody who knows me knows how much I absolutely hate homework, particularly for primary children. I don't see there's any point, but homework has to be done. So make a really nice area in the house somewhere, so wherever you feel your child can work best. So it's not necessarily their bedroom, because their bedroom could be where they are distracted. So it could be the dining room table. It could be where you can sit at the same time. So whilst they're doing their homework, you could be sitting, just writing in a notepad or reading a book on your Kindle. So wherever you feel that they are going to study and work best, set it up. Have pencil pots, have shelves for their papers. I always love 2 boxes, so one for things that need to be done and one for things that have already been finished. Color coding works really well, particularly for our secondary school children who have incredibly complicated timetables. They have an A timetable and a B timetable. So for a child with ADHD, how bloody complicated is that? Is this week A or is it week B? So somewhere have a timetable up, have it color coded, have it so that geography is always blue. So it's blue on the timetable, all the books have a blue sticker on, all the folders are blue, so that it's visual. You know exactly what is when's geography and what books you need, and then it's really, really clear, and that will help with organisation. Something that is really, I know it sounds easy, and sometimes when you've had a manic day and you're exhausted, the last thing you want to feel like is getting the stuff ready for the next day. Sometimes it's like, do you know what? Let this day finish and I'll worry about it tomorrow. But the more you get yourself into a routine, and remember our children love routines, so the more you role model a routine, the more we're helping and supporting our very disorganized children. So if you get into that routine of before, and you could put it on the little plan maybe, so before you go upstairs to bed, one of the little boxes could say, get my stuff ready for school or college or wherever. So make sure everything is in the backpack, everything is in the book bag. If there's PE, the PE kit's done. If it's swimming, the swimming kit's done, and it goes by the front door, or it goes by their door, so you can't even open the door because the stuff's in the way. If you've done homework, put it straight in the book bag. Don't just put it and think, oh, I'll remember it in the morning. You won't remember it in the morning because you'll be running around trying to get them ready for school. So do have that routine. Get stuff ready the night before. Okay, the next challenge, and Hannah touched on this beautifully, but the next challenge is the obvious fear of this blooming virus. And I would say, please, 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 as much as you can, avoid sharing your fears. I know at the height of the virus in April and May, that's all we were all thinking about. And I know the media is still very much focused on it, so turn that off. I know we have to let our children know about it. And I'm not saying avoid all discussion. Of course they have to know about it, but avoid being fearful in front of your child, and avoid having that conversation of, oh, what they're going to do at school, and I hope you're going to social distance. You know, so take that fear and worry out of your voice when you're discussing it, and don't let them overhear you talking about it with somebody else. And I'm not saying it's good to wrap our children in cotton wool and protect them. I don't think we should. I think our children should be aware of what's going on in the world and, world events. But because this is such a unique situation and we're still in it and we still really don't know the end of it. We don't know the outcome of it. I think they all know. They all understand that this is serious. So Hannah was talking a lot about losses and the loss of childhood for our young people, the teenagers, the loss of freedom our teenagers have had. We've got to try as much as possible to get back to some kind of normality for our kids. I've been going through the park all the time, you know, on my daily walk. And at the beginning, I was getting a bit sort of, oh, why are they still playing football? And, you know, and just getting myself a little bit wound up about it. But now I see people going back to doing normal things. And you know, and I'm finding it a beautiful experience because we've got to get through this. You know, we've got to keep social distancing and the mask and the hand washing, but we've got to get through this and get through it with our mental health intact. And if we keep fearful, we're just going to raise a next generation of scared, anxious children. So we need to just try and keep that fear away. So present the facts. You know, our children need to present the facts. My son really catastrophizes an awful lot. So he'll hear something and it will be blown up in a moment. So the way I deal with that is I give him the facts. Well, but that's not going to happen because look at the statistics, look at the percentage. All these children who have already gone back to school, there haven't been outbreaks. If there had been outbreaks in Scotland already, in Europe where they've already gone back to school, in the key worker children, there weren't outbreaks. So present your children with facts. But you can also just keep practicing that. You know, we have to constantly get rid of this virus. And the only way to get rid of it is to hand wash, to hot water and soap and hand wash, and keep sensible social distancing. Children under 11 do not need to wear masks. Staff might be wearing masks at some point. And that for our children is now the new normal. And we've got to make that okay. So as much as we can, we've got to find the positives. You know, the period of lockdown, there will have been positives. You will have had fun as a family, possibly. You would have done things more as a family. You would have noticed stuff about your child that maybe you didn't even know about. So notice the positives and tell your child about the positives of having this period of lockdown. But there will be worry. And of course there will be worry. Going back to school is a worrying experience. They will be going back to something that is completely new. They will not be going back to what they left in March. And we need to let them know that school will look different. It will feel different. So we need to give our children opportunities to talk about that, to talk about their feelings, to talk about their worries. The time our children talk to us absolutely best is when we're walking. So it's sideways. So you're not making eye contact. You're not saying, right, I want to sit down and talk about anything that you're upset about. It's not that. It's just as you're walking or as you're driving in the car, even better, because nobody's looking at each other. You just let them know it's okay. If you want to talk to me, it's okay. So I've been noticing a lot in our ADHD Warrior Squad Facebook group that a lot of people are talking about their children not sleeping, there being more aggression, more oppositional behaviour. And I think this is all because the impending school is going to happen and they've been at home for all this period of time. They've got the worry about the virus. So think about their behaviour, have a look at it and think, why is this? Why are they suddenly not eating? Why are they suddenly might have going really quiet? They might be going into their bedroom and not talking. If you notice anything significantly changing in their behaviour, have a think and give them those opportunities to talk to you about what it, I mean, you don't want to put fear and worry in their head. You don't want to give them, you know, oh, you must be terribly worried that, you know, everybody's going to get the virus and die. You know, you don't want to say that, but you want to just give them that opportunity to let them know if they can articulate. They might not, they might be little, they might be 4 or 5, they might not be able to, they might have language and communication difficulties, particularly if they have got some aspects of autism. So you might need to give them some words and to validate. Next one. So I think we have to then give them the language, give them those words that they can use, and validate all feelings. Don't dismiss any feelings. Don't say, I don't know why you're feeling like that. You know that they've put everything in place. You know, don't negate their feelings. Just say, yes, that must really concern you. And then you can give them the facts. But don't say that they're not feeling like they are, because they are feeling like that, but then give them the facts. But sometimes you don't even need to solve that problem. Sometimes it's just a question of them talking and you just listening. Sometimes what helps our children who have got worries is that if they write them down in a journal, you might want to, when you're doing your Smith's shopping or your Amazon shopping, is buy a special journal just for them to write down any worries they have. And that might not even be that anybody ever looks at it, but just the process of writing sometimes helps our children. Or they might just want to get a little device or a phone and just record into the phone what they're worried about. And then if they want you to look at it, then you can look at it later. But something I'm really, really passionate about is saying to our children, that's okay. That emotion you are feeling is okay. I know a lot of talk about anxiety at the moment, but anxiety and being worried and having butterflies and having your heart pound and having your hands sweaty, all those emotions are okay. The time when it's not okay is when they get too big and then you don't know what to do about them, or you're stuck in that emotion. But make sure you convey that message that all emotions are okay. So what do you do about school? I saw a few comments before I came. People were saying they're petrified about going back to school. So I think the first thing you do is email the school, because you really need to know as much as possible. I think Natasha was saying that she's had no communication. So I think you do the communicating. You ask, we need to know what these new routines are, because as I said earlier, our children find transitions really difficult. And this transition to a new routine, a new setup, the classroom looking completely different, assemblies looking different. They might actually even be going into a different door. There might be a one-way system. Ask for a heads up. Ask for exactly what these new routines are going to be. Ask if they can send any photos of what any new parts of the school will look like. Maybe the arrows on the floor, maybe what the toilets, a new sign on the class, on the toilet door is going to look like. And then I would make a social story using all this information, all the photos, just to reassure your child exactly what the new system is going to look like. If you need any help with social stories, I'm sure Hannah can help you and I can help you with that as well. So another challenge, another tricky thing your children might have is there's new staff. So there might be new members of staff, but there's almost certainly a new teacher. Although if I was a head teacher, I think in the main, I would give the same class teacher back. So the year 3 teacher would now be their year 4 teacher. However, that can't always happen because they might be going across key stages, or some children are going into secondary. So you want to establish a really great relationship with all the new members of staff. So anybody who knows me knows that I'm passionate about this one-page document. So I don't think we should wait to be called into school to be told, oh, Mrs. Lazarus, I just need to have a little chat with you about your son. I think we need to be proactive. I think we need to establish this relationship before the first meeting when you're called in because there's a problem. So I can give you a one-page document, or you can make one yourself, but you need to outline your child's needs. So you need to say exactly what their diagnosis or what your suspected diagnosis is. Remember, in school, you don't need a diagnosis in order for them to help. They just need to have a need which is over and above what the school can provide. So they should be providing reasonable adjustments, which means they should be providing accommodations. They should be giving your child some equipment. And this is what all schools should be doing for all children with a need. It doesn't have to be diagnosed. So you write this one-page document, what your child needs, what equipment they need, how they best learn with the teaching and learning, what breaks they need, but then on the other hand, how they learn best, what are their interests. So if you want a copy, please just email me after this and I'll give you a pro forma. Please have regular meetings. So say to the new teacher, you know, you'd like once every half term, twice every half term, a meeting just to chat and see what's going on, what you can do. You need to be working as a team because you don't want it to be them and us. You don't want to be called in and say, well, this has happened and you know, and all that. You know, I'd like to know what your daughter thinks, and you know, and it's all that sort of. It needs to be that you have regular meetings so that you can give some input of what your child needs, and then the school can feedback of how those things have worked. And you are your child's best advocate. So quite often I speak to parents, I hear parents saying, well, they just won't listen. And I've been into school and I've told them, and I'd say, I think they've got ADHD. You've got to keep on at it. You mustn't let go. You are your child's champion. Something teachers do tend to do is tell your child off in front of you, thinking that you're going to say, yes, you mustn't hit. But actually what you need to say is, well, I'd like to know why he hit. And what was put in place, and why did he not go out to play? You know, so you be your child's best mouthpiece. And our children will be overwhelmed when they start back to school. When they go back to school, starting getting up early, starting with all the pressure, and as Hannah said, that fatigue, that constant need to focus and concentrate, that takes amazing amount of energy. They might be masking. They might know now, oh, I can't fidget, I can't sit still, I've got to sit still, I mustn't turn around, I mustn't move in my seat. That whole thing is exhausting. So be prepared for those meltdowns. As Hannah said, there will be meltdowns. Let me just go back to the meltdowns. Have those strategies in place. You know, have things that places where your child can go. Crushing that ice, stamping on the box, having headphones, having soothing toys, smelling something that calms them down. Have a plan in place so that when this becomes too overwhelming, you've already got it in place. Don't get cross with them, because this is such a big deal going back to school. They will have meltdowns. Go easy on the chores. You know, for the first couple of weeks, this is all so big for them. Maybe they don't need the added pressure of doing stuff as well. And have those reasonable expectations of whether they can sit at the table for dinner, whether they are going to be longer on their Xbox, whether they are going to be able to go for a bike ride when they don't actually really want to. So realise that they are going to be very overwhelmed when they go back to school. It's going to be this new system. They're going to be tired. They've missed out. They've had that loss, and they are going to be exhausted. And maybe instead of homework, I know school, what I expect, like I was a teacher for 30 years, and what I expect is going to happen is that they're going to go back over basics. They're going to go back and relearn lots of things that, so if they're in year 3 and they're now in year 4, I think they're going to go back and start doing year 3 stuff again. They're not going to pick up in year 4. They're going to have to pick up things that your children have missed. So even if there is homework, I would try and negotiate with school and just say, I really actually think they need to be doing fun activities after school. Put it on your planner so that they know, even if that homework, you do it for 5 minutes to satisfy school, and then you have something fun to do. Then you do, I don't know, whatever it is your child loves doing, making Lego models, making, digging in the garden, making a water slide, whatever it is, do that after school, because they need to get back that bit of fun. And then finally, I'm going to finish in a minute. So please, this has been the most difficult time, and it has been massively stressful. So when your child goes back to school, when you finally have some time for yourself, please, please, please do stuff for you. Don't start cleaning the house. Don't start paying the bills. At least for that first week, if you have got time, just sit and do stuff for you, even if you have to cry for half an hour, and then do something lovely. And then, whatever it is that fills you with joy, do it. Please do not feel guilty. You have gone through the most extraordinary time. You have juggled managing the home. You've juggled schoolwork. You have juggled the behaviour of an ADHD child, which is difficult in the best of times. And you might even have had to have worked at the same time. So do not feel guilty by now having some time for you, because I promise you, you are bloody brilliant that you have got through this, and you deserve a little time for yourself. So just really finally, a lot of the stuff I've just been speaking about, I have put into a guide. And if you would like a copy of that guide, please just email me. If you'd like a copy of the one-page document or anything else, the social story, anything else that I've been talking about tonight, please just email. Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And I think I'm going to come back to... I've come back. Yes. Hello, you're all still here.
I'm here. Thank you so much, Solly. That was absolutely brilliant. Really, really useful. I love how practical it was. And I know that there's lots there that parents are going to be able to take away with them. And I'm hoping you're all feeling a bit more reassured and confident because you're informed and you've got some things to go away and get started with. So I really appreciate it, Solly. So we've been on for about an hour now. I think probably just about another 5 minutes we're going to run over a little bit. So do stay with us if you can. There's been a couple of comments that I just wanted to pick up on. Solly was talking about the communication with school, and some of you have spoken about the lack of information of school from school, and how you're quite worried about actually what is going to happen in September, how you're going to get your child out the door. Some of your children have not left the house. They've maybe even just spent most of the time in their room. It's a real issue, and don't assume that your school and the teaching staff will know this and understand this. Please make it really, really clear to them. And as we said before, it's okay to contact your school now. You don't have to wait for the school to contact you. And actually, if your child has spent a lot of time in home, in their room, there is no point expecting that they are going to get up at the start of September, go into school and be there full time, happy as Larry. You need to be speaking with your school now about a reintegration plan and thinking about how is the school going to support you, how are you going to work together to develop a plan to support them just to leave the house, never mind attending school full time. And those conversations need to happen now. And it's okay to ask for a reduced timetable for a period if that is what is needed to gradually integrate your child back to school. Because if they've been very much isolating themselves at home, then it's not going to work just throwing them back in full time anyway. But it does need to be planned very carefully, and it's okay to ask for that to be put in place, to ask for that advice and support from school. Would you mind if I just answered a question? Is that right, Hannah? So Annalise, so
Annalise sort of says she just doesn't get a chance to speak to her son because he's shut down and he's gone into his room and he's shut down. And it sounds like he's a teenager. So I want to really stress that teenagers do shut down. I really recommend a book called Get Out My Life, but first of all, take me and Alex to the train station. And it's by a lady called Suzanne Franks. And that is a fantastic book which just explains what being a teenager is all about. Plus, our children have been in lockdown and they haven't had the language, they haven't had the social maturity, they haven't had the emotional maturity to deal with this. So a lot of our teenagers have shut down. So all I think you can do, Annalise, is keep that relationship, because Hannah spoke about talking to school, which is developing that relationship. But I think with our teenagers, you just have to make it okay that you're there, and you just have to make it okay that you understand, and you just have to make it okay you understand that they do, you know, they're not going to talk to you, because that teenagers will not talk, but you just let it know that you're there if they want to. You're just there, that if there is something that they want to speak about, you know, come and speak to me, or let's go for a walk, or let's go for a drive. I'm here. I don't think any teenager, it only happens in the Waltons, if you sat on their bed and said, right, tell me how you're feeling. You know, it's not going to happen. So, Annalise, be reassured. I think I think it's your son. As long as he knows that he can come to you if he feels the time is ready, I think that's all you can do. But I would definitely recommend that book. It's called Get Out My Life. It's really good.
And also, I think sometimes we can panic and worry so much that we focus on, oh, how can I get my child out the room? How can I get my child talking to me? And if your child has been sort of isolating, it's okay and it's enough just to let them know that you can see that they're struggling. And sometimes that in itself is so powerful for them to not feel the pressure that, oh, actually, I've got to do something I'm really not comfortable doing and I can't cope with. So something as simple as, I can see that you're staying in your room a lot. I understand that this is too much for you, that, you know, perhaps you're feeling worried, perhaps you're feeling stressed. Just saying that is enough. That is okay.
Exactly.
Yeah, really powerful. And the other thing, someone was talking about difficulty engaging your child in home learning. I've got a free course online about motivation engagement for children with special educational needs in doing home learning. So I'll post that in the comments afterwards as well. So just very quickly, go on.
Yeah, so I was just saying, Natalie has said she's been emailing the school weekly for updates and still no advisor. So again, I've got lots of teacher friends, and I know how hard that they were working up to the summer, and they also were very emotional, very overwhelmed, and it was difficult for them. So it has been their summer holiday, and I think they probably have just shut down. But now this week before school, I think they are starting to, you know, get their head back into it. So I'm not making an excuse, Natalie. I'm just keep trying, because most teachers want to know how to best help our children. It will shock you to know that even the ones who are being trained today at university have no training on ADHD. So they do not know what ADHD is about, which is why I think
they get a day on SEN. That's it.
Oh, if they're lucky, they get a day on SEND, exactly, on the whole thing. So, you know, ADHD, I don't know, 5 minutes. They probably tell them what the acronym stands for. So this is why you are the advocate, and this is why I'm so, you need to get that one-page document sorted out, because most teachers want to know how to help our children. Statistically, our children are in the biggest group that's going to be excluded, because that's where it gets to. So before our children get to that point, we have to work with the teachers, have that great relationship, keep on at it, and keep saying, all they need is a break. All they need is to go and do some star jumps. All they need is some water. All they need is small steps. You know, it's so easy, the stuff that they can do. So Natalie, keep keep emailing the school. Email the Senko if you've got the Senko's email address, because I am sure you will get some joy this week, next week.
And I'd also say actually just phone as well, because everything's gone so virtual. It may well be that they're just inundated and just have not worked through their emails yet. So phone as well. There's absolutely no harm in doing that. So I'm very quickly going to whiz through these resources just to let you know what they are. So we can see that we've got at the top here, there's a really fantastic blog that Solly's done. I love it. It is so clear. So if you do want to know what is ADHD, if your child's just being diagnosed, you're concerned that they may have ADHD, check it out. And as Solly mentioned before, her guide, which is very much about what we've been talking about today on preparing your child to go back to school. I've also got a blog on preparing children with special educational needs for school transitions, and there is a list at the bottom of things you can include in a transition pack, so you might want to take a look at that. And then the link to the online course I mentioned, which is for schools, for teaching staff, in terms of understanding trauma and bereavement and loss, the impact on child development, and then what you can do to prepare and support children once they go back to school. If you do want to try to talk a bit more about coronavirus with your child in a way that is not going to exacerbate their anxiety, then this is a nice link here from Attitude. And then here we have, again, another link to an NSPCC article on how to talk to your child about their worries going back to school. So, Natalie, that might be something you want to take a look at. Something that I didn't mention earlier when I was talking about emotional regulation, because that wasn't the main focus of this course, but if you do want to explore it a bit more, there's something called Zones of Regulation, which is a fantastic resource. It's used in a lot of schools, but it can be used at home as well. And Nicole Day has really clearly explained it for parents if you want to take a look. Childline have a calm zone, so if you want to explore some self-calming activities, doing it together with your child, take a look, and it's really child friendly. There's loads of resources on the Child Bereavement UK website. If you have unfortunately experienced a bereavement, or your child knows somebody that has died, then take a look there. Solly mentioned social stories as a really useful way to support children. So I've put a link here into Carol Gray's website, so you can find more information about that. And then we've just been talking a lot about planning with schools. This is a really fantastic leaflet by Send Gateway. It has tons of really great questions that you can ask your school in supporting you and to think through about how you might ask them, what are they going to be doing to help your child? Because I think sometimes as parents, you go to meetings, you're not quite sure what to say. You know what you want to know, but you're not sure how to ask. So this is a really, really great leaflet. Please do take a look at it. And I've also put the Royal College of Paediatrics and Child Health link there, because they have loads of resources in relation to coronavirus, emotional needs, well-being, tons and tons of links of information, books, websites that are great for children. So you can just have a little explore there. So that has brought us to the end. Thank you for bearing with us. Sorry we ran over a little bit. It has been a real pleasure to speak this evening. I know that Solly and I have been really looking forward to being here, because we're both passionate about supporting children, making sure that they're able to access and thrive in education. And we know that as parents, you're all really worried, but we want you to know you are doing a fantastic, stellar job. And please do not underestimate the impact that you have on your children just by looking out for them. So
and
yeah,
finally, so I'm absolutely banging on about self-care. So Zinat, thank you very much for putting it out there as well, that yes, that self-care message for parents of children with ADHD is so important. So please, you have done an amazing job, but please go and look after yourselves.
Alrighty, so we've got a couple of links here that if you want to find out a bit more about some of the things that we do. As I said at the start, I will post the slides onto the comments, and Solly and I will go through and respond and answer to everybody's questions. So if you're watching this and it's not live, please still feel free to ask questions, post comments, and we'll do our best to answer them. Thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Bye.